We often talk about emotions and the role that they play in our lives, the needs and the messages of the emotions. Today, we're going to be diving into shame and the message of shame, but also how the fear of shame can sabotage us, how it can hold us back from trying new things and building deep connections. We have Elijah Runyan, the director of certified coaching, on as he is going to share his experience and his light bulb moments with recognizing that it wasn't even the shame that was holding him back, but it was the fear. Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open our emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected within our bodies and ourselves. On today's podcast, we have Connection Codes Director of Certified Coaching, Elijah Runyan, along with marriage and family therapist and clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. Together, they have founded the Connection Codes, the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Hello, world.
Hi, friends. Wow. Well, today is the exciting day because we have Elijah Runyan in the studio with us, which is so fun. He flew in yesterday. And of course, when one of our coaches flies in, we've got to pull him in and have him on our podcast. And Elijah came prepared. You've got the topic. So why don't you, for the sake of our audience, throw it out there. Let us know what we're talking about today.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it. Well, so one of the joys of being in the coaching cohorts is you get to spend time with you guys.
Yes.
And what's really fun for me is, I'll be honest, sometimes Glenn shares the same stories because it's a new group of people, but I've heard them before. But if you tune in, he says things that I'm like, oh, I gotta. Connection codes are super simple, but they're also very deep and complex, right? They are. And so I get to hear things. And maybe about 6 months ago, you said this phrase, and I just picked up on it. You said, I don't know if I have shame or fear of shame, or I don't know if shame was the emotion, but it was something like that. Yeah. And I just made a mental note and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Fear of shame. Okay. And so I just started to ponder that. And what I realized is that I thought I was cruising around with shame all the time because I would say that's is my constant companion. But what I realized is that it's not always shame, that it's actually fear of experiencing shame. And I just started to tune into myself and realize that a whole lot of my behavior had been driven by fear of experiencing another emotion. And just processing the fear or thinking I'm processing the emotion didn't actually get to the bottom. And I was still living in kind of a flooded state where my behavior was being driven by a fear of experiencing shame. And it would keep me from doing stuff with my business, with my coaching practice, or keep me from creating a content piece, or even keep me from connecting with my wife, you know, especially in intimacy and sex. Like, oh, I have fear of experiencing shame here, so I wouldn't communicate to her. And so I thought that was really fascinating. And then I can't tell if it's because it was what was happening for me, or it's just what's happening with my clients as well, or if it's a little bit of both. But then I came across a couple of sessions with these clients, multiple different clients. This happened like 3 different times, where I noticed the same thing was happening for them. It was really cool. I could share a couple of those stories because I think it was kind of cool because so in this one story, and I got permission to tell these stories, so I won't use any names, but this one couple, it's really neat. They're so cute and so fun, and they're thriving now using the Connection Codes tools, and they're super connected, and you can see it in just a handful of sessions. They're like really connected. And in our last session, I noticed something was going on with her because he was expressing his joy about their connection. And I just asked her, hey, what's happening over there? Because her like she kind of tensed up and noticed she like almost withdrew from him a little bit. And she's like, oh, I just keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm like, okay, tell me about that. What's happening with that? And she's like, well, I just have a lot of fear that, you know, this isn't going to last forever. That all of a sudden he'll stop using the tools and we'll be disconnected. And I'm like, okay. So what would happen? And so I just sliced it thinner for what would happen if he did stop using the tools. And I just kept going, and she expressed the fear, but her body didn't change at all. I could tell she hadn't processed out what was happening. So I just kept asking questions. What would happen if that? What would happen? And what we ended up getting to is she was flooded with fear about experiencing the hurt and the lonely and the sad of their marriage before.
Mm-hmm.
And when she got to processing the actual emotion she was afraid of, her body relaxed. She like moved closer to him. And I just thought, wow, that is really a fascinating thing, that we can think we're processing the fear or think we're processing the emotion. But until she processed that she had fear of experiencing another emotion, and that was actually the fear that was happening for her, that's when we got to the bottom.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really, really fascinating to watch. So that's one of the stories.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful with Connection Codes coaching. And of course, you know this, just to continue following the energy, continue pursuing and help people get underneath. And just like you say, and it's a mystical thing to me, I think humans are very fascinating. You can see it. And, we say follow the energy till the end. You don't know what the end is, but you can feel it when you get there.
Yep.
And that's what you experienced with her, if I'm hearing you right, that you're just all of a sudden like, oh, there it is. Now I can see that her body has relaxed. It's like, that's weird. It's like, how come it didn't happen 30 seconds earlier?
Totally.
Well, because she wasn't all the way to the core yet. She wasn't at the bottom of it. And if... for you, of course, as her coach, but for her husband as well, to be able to follow her energy. And, we say slower is faster. If you slow down, give it that extra, we always say 30 seconds. So what if it takes 3 minutes? Whoop-de-doo. I mean, that's massively different than what most people do. Most people, it's 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks for us. So you just keep pursuing the core, get underneath. I just love... and I wish we could do I don't know what that'd be called, but like an energy. So it didn't show a video of them, but it showed a video of her energy.
Yeah.
And you can just see it. It's intense. It's there. It's stuck. And then it releases.
Yep. That's exactly what it was like.
Some sort of graph or something. Just so beautiful.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Love it.
It's interesting. We were with just a client this week ourselves where it's kind of like his go-to is anger. And so they had kind of a rough weekend, and Glenn's always really good at like, what was the moment that y'all lost each other? And so went back to that moment that they'd had lunch on, over the weekend, and it was that moment, right? But he goes, yeah, I just felt so much anger. And he expressed it like big anger. Wow. And he said, yeah, I felt so much anger. I just wanted to slap her, which he didn't, and he wouldn't have, but he was trying to express to us, like, I felt that much anger. Wow. So we listened to the whole narrative. And then I said, what happened before the anger? And I mean, we've met with him a good bit, so it's not like this is brand new, but it still caught him. Like, he's like, no, I just felt anger, and then to slow him down and go, I hear that. I hear the anger. Like, I get it. I see it. But what happened before the anger? And because when he shared the narrative of what had happened, I'm thinking, oh, I would feel really, really hurt.
Yeah.
And a lot of pain.
Yep.
But he didn't get there for himself. Yep. And then we kind of, in that moment, really tried to slow him down so he would consider looking at the situation and what was before. And of course, it's so tempting for me to want to fill in the blanks.
Oh, totally.
Like, I know the answer here.
Like,
I know it's hurt. I know it's hurt, but I can't say it. You need to get there on your own.
So good.
I don't know if you wrote down what he said because you had him repeat it. So I don't know if you'll remember, but it's like that idea that he doesn't want to hurt. He didn't say, I have fear of the hurt. He was just like, cannot even imagine if he allowed himself the hurt. So he spent the whole weekend just angry.
Yep.
And so she was trying to soothe him, basically. But it was interesting because he didn't want to be around her. And so he was giving her the still face, the cold shoulder, I just want to be by myself.
Move away from hurt.
Right. Yeah. Because he didn't want to deal with the hurt. And the anger felt comfortable to him, but he was trying to manage it. And the only way he could manage it was to be by himself.
Yeah.
And so, of course, she desperately was reaching out and she desperately was like wanting his touch and his presence. And he wanted to hold on to that anger because he didn't want to feel the hurt. And so we met with them, I think, on Monday. So there was those many days between Friday and Monday because the incident had happened on lunch on Friday. And it's just so fascinating because it's the resistance. It's like we resist our own emotion.
Absolutely.
And in the moment, it's like, oh, he even called it, I build a wall really quick. Like when he felt the hurt, he built a wall. And then he just goes right to anger.
Right to anger. Yep. So this couple, when we first met, I had them do the wheel, and they got to hurt. She got to hurt, and she's like, no, don't feel any hurt. There's no hurt. But then as we would go on, she would get to anger really quick. She could identify anger, and I'd just slice it thinner. Okay, so what happened before the anger? And what I have found just in some of my coaching sessions is that the emotion that you have the hardest time identifying, you experience the most because it's the most familiar. And that's,
you don't notice it.
And you don't notice it
everywhere.
It's just there. Yep. And she was experiencing hurt. And I'm like, man, I would feel hurt. I would feel hurt at that. And so then when she didn't, if she would have just said, I have fear that you're going to stop using the tools and we'll be disconnected. She wouldn't have got, because the big emotion was fear of hurt. She was afraid of feeling hurt, which is an emotion that she was allergic to but lived with all the time. But until she actually got to that place, she didn't have fear of anger. She's comfortable with anger, you know, but it's the hurt beforehand. And so I thought this is so fascinating. Really
and you've both mentioned that. I think it's worth pointing out because people say that a lot. They're like, I'm comfortable with anger. That's because anger is a protector. It's designed to be your protector. It's designed to power you up. It's epinephrine oriented, which is adrenaline, and it feels good because you, in that moment, need an ally. Well, anger is your ally. And that's the reason with Connection Codes coaching that it's so powerful in following people's energy, because what we typically do, and what I was trained in as a therapist, is to try to tamp down people's anger. And for me to say, oh, Elijah, okay, buddy, calm down, breathe, take some deep breaths. Come on, calm down, buddy. No, I want the anger. I'm going to fan the flames of the anger. I want to hear the anger. And so when someone says anger, and even if I know it's secondary anger, I never say to people, no, well, it's anger, but forget that. What happens underneath that? I'm following their energy in that going, oh, yeah, I hear the anger. Yeah. So what else happens for you? More anger. Oh, I hear that. Because, again, I know that there's more underneath it. And I go, oh, I hear that. So what else happened? Like, what happened before the anger? It was more anger. Okay. What happened before that? I'm just following their energy. I'm agreeing with them. I'm not arguing with them. I'm not disagreeing. I'm not going, no, it's not anger. Come on. Tell me what it really is. Because then I become their enemy. I become their I'm not their ally. I'm their attacker. And I'm going to follow their energy and help them get, and I've never sat with anybody, I don't think, where they don't eventually realize that, oh, yes, it is anger. It's not that it's not anger. It is anger. But there's something else happening, before or underneath. And I just think that I love the Connection Codes, but that's one of the most powerful things to me is following people's energy.
Oh, yeah, it's so beautiful.
And when you're in it, and I get it, when you're in the relationship, when you're in the interaction, it's easy to sit here and say it. And it's easy as Connection Codes coaches to tell people to do it. But that's the very moment. I did a session with a couple yesterday, and I had them practice that, where she would say, because she's just a fiery Latino woman, and she'll say these nasty things to him. And so as soon as she says it, he bristles and resists her energy. And so we practiced in session her saying nasty. I'm talking about nasty stuff. I'm not allowed to say on air. The stuff that she would say to him. And we practiced it, and it was amazing.
Oh, I love that.
And him following her energy in it. And I'm like, dude, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying she's right. I'm not voting for her. I'm not on team wife here. She's doing I'm teasing her. I'm like, you did a terrible job with that. Shame on you. Bad connection coder. And of course, she's just laughing. I said, but it's a protocol. Every emotion's an opportunity to connect or not. And so when she walks in the room and says, I hate you, you worthless piece of great opportunity.
Yeah.
Incredible. I'm not saying it's easy. Incredible opportunity to be like, there's some energy in that. I can feel it. Help me get what's happening for you there. So it's just an amazing opportunity. I
love it. I got this analogy come to me about following the energy when I was doing a session a few months ago where, she comes in, she says, "You're such a jerk," whatever. And if you think of it as like a rope, and if you're playing tug of war and she's like pulls and she goes, "You're such a jerk, I hate you." And you go, "No, you're a jerk," and you pull back on the rope. You've just resisted the energy. Rather, they pull on the rope and you just push the rope. And it's really hard to pull a rope that somebody's not putting tension on the other side. And it really diffuses that tug of war, that resisting of the energy. So you just push the rope and follow the energy.
Yeah.
That's just like,
we're not saying it's right. We're not agreeing. We're not condoning. But we are where we are in that moment, and it's crappy. So what are we going to do with this in the moment? And again, it's fierce. One of my numerous pet peeves about what people say about the connection codes is just that they're sweet and nice. The connection codes are fierce. The connection codes, I don't love the word aggressive, but they're aggressive. They're powerful. And for you to walk in the room and insult me, and for me to be powerful and go, "Whew, I hear you, dude. So that's what you think of me. So help me get what happens for you with that." And that's a powerful moment. And that's not me being sweet. Yeah. That's me being, again, I don't love the word, but that's me being aggressive, intentional, focused, very, very directional, because I want to get somewhere in this interaction, in this relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's cool. You said there was another scenario. I wanted to hear that too.
Well, I also was thinking just of you personally, Elijah, because you have had your own stories around it. And I know often for our listeners, they love the personal stories in the sense of, oh, that's so relatable, and totally can see how that plays out in their own lives because they hear us share and have guests on that also share their stories. And so I know you alluded to that when we started. So I'd love if you could just give us an example of how that's played out.
Of fallen energy or fear?
No, I would say fear, like you have mentioned fear of shame, where realizing that was a big moment for you when you came to that of, oh, that's what's stopping, because I don't.
As I look back, even at my pre-connection coach journey and then the very beginning of it, I'm realizing that fear of shame in particular, fear of shame, because I think that's kind of my trauma story, is that unworthy, not good enough, not valuable, lots of low identity messages, low value messages, that was driving so much behavior. It was constant. Even like in my marriage, like if my wife would communicate hurt, I would resist her energy so hard and explain to her why she shouldn't feel hurt because of my heart for her. And so this idea that like, no, I'm not going to feel shame or guilt about hurting you because I didn't mean to. And I would just resist her all the time. And I do remember the very first time I oohed her, literally she stopped in the middle of the conversation. She's like, "I don't know what's happening right now. Like, what is going on?" She's like, it was that dramatic because I had done that for so long. And then definitely in parenting, oh my gosh, so much in parenting, where their behavior feels like a representation of me and the fear of experiencing shame and just wanting to control and put my hands, because I just didn't want to feel that. It was such an intense feeling all the time that I'm so adverse to experiencing shame. Definitely in trying new things or not being good at something. Like if I'm not good at something, I would steer away from it because that fear of shame. So just realizing that was a really big breakthrough because it's allowed me to go, whew, what's happening? Oh, I'm afraid that I'm going to look like a failure. I'm afraid that I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm afraid that people aren't going to think I'm a good person. I'm afraid, like all of these things. And then, so it's been really beautiful, especially because in the last season, there's been a lot of pain. And so being able to tune into myself and be like, okay, process this, because my reaction would be pushing people away instead of pressing into them, because fear of that shame, fear of that low value message. And so I would push people away because I'm like, no, I just don't want to deal with that. I'm too afraid of experiencing shame that I'm going to distance myself relationally and geographically in some, and that played out all the time, all the time. So it's really beautiful to be able to tune into myself and go, oh, yeah, I have fear that I'm going to look stupid, that I'm going to be hurt, that I'm going to be given a low value message. Yeah, I just am. I'm afraid of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, on a practical level, because it's interesting being with this couple on Monday, that on his own, he said, I think this afternoon I need to write out all the ways I am hurt. And
I love that.
And it was like, good for you. Like that he came, that made sense to him. And the way, even with what you just now shared, I visually see a hallway, and in this, there's all these doors, and like for you, the door would be labeled shame. And so you walk up to it and you go, nope, not going to open it.
Totally.
Too much fear. So I'm just going to pass that one by. And like with this guy that we were talking to, there's a door labeled hurt. And it's like, don't want to feel that. So I'm not going to open that door. So I'm just going to go on. Yeah. And then, like for him, he finds the door that has anger on it. He's like, I'm comfortable with that. I'm going to go in that room. Yep. I'll hang out in there. But what happens relationally, which was so evident, when we were talking to them together, is that she is so left out. Like there's so much lonely for her, even though she caused the hurt, but he won't talk about it. And he won't talk his anger. I think in some ways he wants to sit in it, but he's also, it gets really ugly. Like he doesn't want to be around her because it's like, I don't want to do something I'll regret later.
Yeah, totally.
And so then he isolates. And it's just a fascinating, when you think of this hallway idea, especially, if you're listening right now and you think about a hallway that has all 8 emotions on a different door, is there a particular door that you avoid at all costs?
Yeah.
And it to me, it gets back to that. I have fear. And I've shared this many times on podcasts. I have fear of anger. So I actually would say, if there's a door I'm going to avoid, it's going to be the door that has anger written on it. Yeah. And it seems very scary. And, I may open the door and then I look in, but I'm not going to step in that room because it's dark, it's black, it's scary. It seems too big now. Like, I should have dealt with that a long time ago kind of stuff. And I'm too old now and it's too big. And the room is, a maze, and everything that I could possibly be afraid of is in that room. And so you as a listener, if you could just picture that hallway and go, am I comfortable going into each room? Am I comfortable looking at shame? Am I comfortable experiencing that feeling or sad? Or, I remember when my mom was dying and I didn't want to cry, and Glenn was a really rough year. And, this is kind of the connection code story, like how the wheel came about and all that. But I remember him saying to me, I think you're sad. And I would say, I don't have time to be sad.
Sure.
And so I was avoiding at all costs sad. And I would not have opened that door for anything. Wow. Like, no, I need to stay in the hall because I don't have time for really any emotions. And of course, that is so unhealthy. Yep. And we can't do that. That is so destructive. So it's just like with what you were saying, you realized for years your fear of shame kept you from going into the room of shame. And so you were just like, relationships were being hurt in the process, and your kids, your wife, other relationships. And just to realize that we may be comfortable in the hall, but that's not, it's
such a good analogy.
It's a very you don't then get close to people. Like you don't have that depth.
I got really curious about myself, and that's what brings the curiosity for others. And that's why I just really was curious, like, okay, what would happen if I do experience shame? Well, I'm going to have to learn to sit in that.
Yeah.
I have to learn to be okay with experiencing that. And once I got to that place, then it's not as scary. Mm-hmm. Then I'm almost like processing the fear as well. It's like, okay, I know now I'm afraid of experiencing shame. Okay, but what happens if I do? Because I do experience it. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I just got to be okay with that, process it, talk to my wife about it, share it with somebody safe. Yeah. But I get it. That's like, The idea, I love the analogy, like what would happen if I go sit in a dark room? Oof, fear, so much fear. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you in 2025.
Well, different, but same principle. And this is either pre-connection codes or early connection codes for us. But whenever I'd say to Phyllis, babe, I think you're sad. And she said, well, I don't have time to be sad, because her business had quadrupled during that quarter. And so she's just wide open. I mean, 24/7, really poor. We handled it poorly. It was just too much for her. But we didn't know. It was all organic. We didn't know if, this is the only crazy week. Oh, okay, it's going to be 2 crazy weeks. Okay, so it's 3 crazy weeks. We didn't know this. So it just keeps going and building. And if we had the Connection Codes tools in our arsenal at that point, for me to be able to say to her, babe, so what would happen, exactly your question, what would happen if you did feel sad? What would happen if you did sit down and just be sad? Well, of course, since I've realized, her dad passed away in 1988. She cried every day for a year after that.
Oh, wow.
She didn't have time to do that.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, dude?
Yep.
I'm trying to run a freaking business here.
That makes sense.
So what I was saying to her is, hey, babe, why don't you sit down and cry every day for a year?
Yeah, shut this whole thing down.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Wow.
I've got, 19 phone calls that are waiting for me to respond to right now. I don't have time to cry every day for a year.
That's very real.
So, and of course, we didn't have these tools to be able to do that, but for her to be able to process through that and to sit, because in reality, these emotions process very quickly once we grab them and embrace them. Yeah. It's part of the power, I think, of the Connection Codes, that we don't view emotion as good or bad, right or wrong, positive or negative. It just is. It just exists. Yep. So we're just going to grab it and look at it and go, what's happening with sad? Oh, I feel sad. My mom's passing away. She's my best friend. I love my mom. Ugh, sad. And you sit in that for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes. Yeah. That doesn't mean it won't happen again in a half hour. If it does, we'll do it again then. But it's actually so much faster than resisting and pushing away, because now it's ever present and it's always there.
Totally.
All day long.
Always.
So now you spent, 10 hours with sadness instead of 30 seconds each, 15 times that day. Which sounds crazy. It's like, wait, 15 times? Yeah, process it 15 times.
Every time.
And 30 seconds each. There you go. That's a heck of a lot faster than 10 hours of that weightiness of the sadness or whatever the emotion's happening in the moment. Wow.
So when we first started talking about this, you had an experience, I think recently, with several clients where the evidence of fear of an emotion stops us from going in that room and just working it through with several clients by slicing it thinner.
Yeah. Another example is really quite cool. This guy, he is in a separation from his wife at the moment. And we've been working together for 3 months or so. And he's going to a new couples therapist with her. They're not actually in the room together, but this one is going to be more about deciding, are we moving forward or are we getting divorced? It's that kind of a meeting. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's process through that. Let's get it flushed out before you go, so that you're regulated. And he's like, I just have so much fear about this meeting. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. Okay, tell me what's happening with the fear. And he just says, well, it's just fear of the unknown. Fear of, is she going to want to get back together? Is she not? And I think often we take like anxiety or fear, and it is the fear of the unknown. And we have a hard time as humans with the unknown, not knowing what to expect. Because of this experience I've had of having fear of shame, and I just realized that I just like, okay, let's follow that. Let's see what happens. I'm like, okay, so it's a fear of unknown. What's the unknown? And he's, well, I don't know if she's going to want to reconcile or if she's not. I'm like, okay, well, let's take those 2 scenarios and let's slice those thinner. Okay, what would happen for you if she decided to get back together? And he's like, well, I would have joy, of course, but then a flood of all of the other emotions. Shame, because a lot of this was because of his behavior, guilt, the lonely, the fear of not actually ever being connected and living the way they used to live, the whole thing. So what he was actually afraid of is if she said, yes, let's reconcile, all of these emotions that are going to come up and how. So it wasn't the fear of the unknown, because then we took the other scenario. Okay, what if she says no? Same thing, the whole dang wheel. he's just flooded with it. And once we got to process that it was fear of experiencing these emotions, his body relaxed. He was like, oh, wow. It just was so interesting when he said fear of the unknown. You could stop there. You're like, yeah, that's a lot. But then when we got to, no, it's not actually the fear of the unknown. It is that, but it's fear of, if this happens, I'm going to experience all of these things. And if this happens, and then we were able to actually flush out these two scenarios. And he was able to go into the meeting regulated and ooh her and follow her energy, because if he didn't, I think it could have manifested as anger, which had done before. And that's really scary for her. So I just thought it was really beautiful. And he just did the work, he dug in, and I had him, his homework for that week was to take both scenarios and do exactly what your client did and go through every single emotion, but don't move on until you found all of it.
Wow.
So stay on shame, all of the things, just all of it until you can't think of any more things, then move on. Go on hurt. And he did that with both scenarios before he went to the meeting. There's no resolve in the situation yet, but he at least could show up authentically. He could show up regulated. He could show up and give her identity and not be grabbing for it himself. So I just thought it was really beautiful. Like, yes, we have fear of the unknown. Often but I'm starting to ask myself, okay, but what is actually the unknown? And for me, it's usually like fear of shame. But I'm going to go into an experience that I can't control any of the external things. And so there's a ton of fear in that. But really the fear is like, what if I get up on that stage and things that I can't control go wrong and I'm going to look stupid, or I'm going to feel lonely, or I'm going to feel sad. So I just thought it was really a beautiful moment to go deeper, flush out actually what the fear of unknown was. So
wow.
Yeah, and you find that with people, as far as the Connection Coach coaching protocol, you just keep saying, so what else happens? What else happens? It's bizarre. And again, we've already referenced it, and it's a mystical thing, but you get to the end. And at some point, the person will go, that's about it. That's it. And they can feel it. And, usually, not always, because humans are too complex, but every human's unique. But usually you can see it in their body, like you watch their whole.
Absolutely.
It's not exactly quantifiable, but you can just see it in their facial expression. If they've had their fists clenched, they'll unclench them. If they've had their arms folded, they'll unfold them. If they've been leaning away from the other in the relationship, they'll actually relax and either sit up straight or lean towards them. So, which is just bizarre to see. And I just wanted to mention, too, because you referenced that with the couple, as far as him writing out his hurts. And that's an emotional dam. That's not ideal. That's not the human condition. We're stuck. We are where we are. We have to do something to get this dam, because there's already a dam. So we got to deal with the dam. The dam has to be burst, has to be released. But our goal is so that there is no list. So that if you sat down an afternoon and say, what are my unprocessed hurts? You got a blank page. And, we reference our 12-month-old, 14-month-old grandsons, Rowan and Malachi. They have a blank sheet. Well, Malachi, what did you not process today? He's like, I know he doesn't speak English, but,
Speaks
like,
baby.
I've processed everything. Well, Rowan, what's left over for you, buddy? What do you need to process this weekend, with your parents when you sit down with them? Rowan's like, what? I processed everything in the moment, immediately as it happened. Like, dang, dude, you're pretty proficient connection coder. Yeah, that's what we're hardwired to do. We're all born that way. And then somewhere along the way, we get knocked off course. So, but that's our objective, is to be up to date, up to speed all the time.
Yeah, I agree.
So that Christina knows what's happening with Elijah. And I want to mention this too, because I've heard this a bunch of times lately in sessions, that people talk about therapy models or whatever that say you need time away from each other. That's really important, that you get time away. We're not designed that way. If you look at all the primates, and whether you believe in any DNA connection or whatever, it doesn't matter to me, but you never say to a chimpanzee, dude, you just need some time away. You need to get away from the group. They live in tandemship all the time. That's what we're designed to do. And we would never say to a 12-month-old, buddy, you need some time alone. You need some time away. Well, what birthday do we say that to them?
Yeah,
once they turn 2, we're like, ugh, you need. And we unfortunately do that, and we did that in our parenting, where we give them time outs.
Yeah.
That's the very time they need us the most, and we're telling them to go live in cyclation. And I get it, it's for 2 minutes. But that's the time they most need connection. And that's the time we're telling them, when they're most dysregulated, we're saying you need to be alone. So the reality is you don't need time away from the person, you need time away from the pain. And we need to process the pain. Yep. That's what the problem is. It's not the person. And what we've done, and again, it's been reinforced 50,000 times, unfortunately, for people, is that they think that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I experienced pain with Phyllis. So, I just need alone time. Yeah. I just need space. And I hear couples say that all the time. One of them will say, I just need space. I just need space. I need my alone time. Actually, you're not designed for that. And I don't care if you do. Whatever helps you. Doesn't matter to me. But in reality, we're not designed that way, because typically what all that helps us do is to ignore, suppress, deny the core emotion that's happening. Yep. And we get away for whatever, 30 minutes, an hour, a weekend, and then we just stuff it better.
Yep.
And then we come back and put up a good front, put up a good face, the stunt double.
Until you get hurt again.
And then, until it happens again, then at some point we're like, oh my gosh, I need some time alone. And so then we go and we get better at stunt doubling. And in reality, that's working to our detriment, not to our benefit.
It's a really good cue for me, I've realized, is if I feel like I want to move away from my wife, I need to check in with myself. It's like a cue.
Yep.
Hey,
what is happening?
Because when I'm processed, I never want to be away from her.
Yep.
That connection is addicting. I don't want to be away.
You say that again, because that's going to piss some people off. I love it.
That connection is addicting?
Well, no, that when you're processed, you never want to be.
It's true.
I guarantee you we'll get comments on this. People will be like, that's unhealthy. What are you talking about? Because it's been put into our DNA that people think that is good and right and healthy.
It's just been my experience. I mean, I can't speak for other people, and it's not, they may say, oh, that's codependent or whatever, but it's not I am my most authentic self when I feel connected to her, is the most free. It's not dependent. Yep. It's the most free I feel when we are deeply, authentically connected. Yep. And I don't want to be away from that. When I do, something is happening for me.
Yeah.
That's just what I've experienced. And I've experienced a lot of years. We've been married almost 19 years, pre-connection codes of not wanting to be around her all the time. Yeah. I have experienced a lot of years of that. Yeah. So I know what that feels like. And now I'm like, nope, that's something going on for me. I must feel, and I have to cue in because I'm not always aware of what's going on. Right. So that's just my experience.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I love about the connection codes is, and we can discuss research and data and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, just think it through logically. I feel so connected with Phyllis. I feel so bonded with her. I need some time away from her. What? Oh, yeah. We're just really, I'm just experiencing so much joy, so much peace, so much connection with her. I need some time away from, that doesn't even make sense. Right. I need time away from her whenever I'm feeling pain. And again, I'm not saying that's the best thing to do. Yep. That's when I feel like I need time away from her, which of course is the very time that I actually need more help. A woman said with quite a bit of venom in a session the other day, I thought was so good. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily venom, but it was intensity, because he pulls away from her whenever she gets agitated, when she gets elevated, any sort of emotion elevated. And she was really, really just moved and overwhelmed. And she was in tears. And she said, babe, the time that I look like I need you the least, that's the time I need you the most. And he was startled by that. He's like, wait, what? I've been giving you space all these years because you yell at me and tell me you need space. You tell me you don't want to be with me. Well, I get it. It seems logical to go, oh, okay, I will honor her request. And she's handled it poorly, and she gets that. But she's like, that's when I need you the most. That's not when I need you the least. And that was a revelation for him. He's like, all these years I've been honoring what she said. You need space for me? Oh, okay, well, I'll just leave you alone for whatever, 3 days, 3 weeks. And so they'd completely lose each other. And then after 3 days, she doesn't feel any better. All she's done is gotten over the initial sting of the pain and stored it up. And now she just ignores it. So it didn't help them. It didn't help them. It didn't help their relationship any. She just learned how to grin and bear it a little bit better, which, of course, makes their relationship weaker, not stronger.
Wow. Such good topics, you guys. Every time we do an episode, we do the wheel.
Okay.
So, Elijah, so much joy if you would do the wheel today.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Okay. Where do I start? Shame. That's one that's always firing for me. I think shame about my behavior, especially pre-connection codes, just in all of my relationships.
Wow.
And that was a big driver. Lots of guilt there too, especially with my kids and my wife. And I think I also hurt my own feelings in that, which is interesting. It felt hurt by myself, like just looking back, like, man, what were you doing? Tons of sad there in just how I operated and moved through life and what the culture I created. Definitely some lonely, I would say, in this journey of connection codes. I mean, we have a great connection codes community, but especially in parenting and even like what you said, the connection, like not like wanting to be connected all the time, it can be lonely because not everybody is doing it. And it can seem weird or not society's way. So that's definitely some lonely. There's some anger in there probably too, because I just see so many people. It's like getting unplugged from the matrix. And all of a sudden you just see there's so much happening for these people, you know, and you watch people with their kids. It's so sad watching them parent through their emotions. So definitely anger that people are missing out. Just an overwhelming flooded with joy to be here. To be here to Christmas dinner in a couple of days and joy in just the season of life I'm in with my kids and my wife and joy that we're so connected. I think I got them all.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your heart and so excited that you're one of our Connection Codes coaches. If you are listening and you want to know more about Elijah, get on our website, connectioncodes.co. And under the menu, it says find a coach, and Elijah's on our page. And so you can reach out to him through that.
Yeah, well, I did want to add, too, that you're not only a Connection Codes coach, you're in charge of the Connection Codes coaching universe. And it was so cool yesterday, you know, when you flew in and we had lunch together. And just hearing your dreams and schemes, you know, I've been dreaming and scheming about the Connection Codes for years, and now it's just getting crunked up. I mean, it is all over the world. Fun. We had a couple contact us from Brazil the other day and said, hey, can we go ahead and translate the book into Portuguese? And we're like, yeah, that was at the top of our list for today, this week. The Connection Codes universe is expanding continuously. And you're certainly more in the mix than most. But people are just dreaming and scheming all over the place. Connection Codes Germany is blowing up. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, the Hispanic world. So, you know, you're such a part of that. And there's lots of you out there that are going to become Connection Codes coaches. And Elijah's the one that's coordinating all that. And there's just so much power in that. And of course, you are just over the top as far as excellence and that desire. And it's just so cool. I'm not an implementer. I'm a dreamer. I'm a visionary, which is in and of itself worthless because if you don't implement anything, it's like, well, that was a neat idea and it floundered and nothing happened. So just having people, you know, on our team that are actually making stuff happen. And Tira is spectacular,
rock star.
But she can only do X amount. She gets 24 hours a day just like everybody else. So anyway, we just really appreciate you and honor you. And I want people to know you and get to connect with you because what you're bringing to the table is just spectacular.
Awesome. Thank you.
So to clarify, you are the director of our Connection Codes coaching certification program, which is actually, we've got another group starting at the end of January. So
the 21st of January.
21st of January. So we're excited. So if you're listening today and you're like, okay, I keep hearing little bits and pieces about it. I want to know more. Book a call with Elijah or any of our other team members and get some information because it's a really incredible program.
I will say, if you want to experience what your life could be like with a wonderfully, beautifully connected community, join a coaching cohort. It is remarkable. People all over the world that I only known for a week, and I feel so connected to them. It is amazing.
Wow.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. So we do all of this
because you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Well, thank you so much to Elijah for coming on today and sharing his experience and even questioning some things. I always love those moments where we can dig even deep within each other and kind of push each other further to see what's happening within us. And if you are listening and you're like, okay, I may be held back by fear, I may be being held back by shame, there is something happening in my body that is keeping me from this connection, and I'm not quite sure what it is yet, I encourage you definitely download our Core Emotion Wheel. That is the 4-minute tool that helps you to get unstuck. And if you're ready to take it a step further, our Foundations for Marriage course is the course that builds connection within your relationships. This is where you learn how to communicate with your partner and those around you. It gives you the tools to overcome conflict quickly and see each other in a whole new way. As you're starting 2025, if you are wanting to build that connection with each other, this is the best time and the best place to start. As always, we are so glad that you are here, that you join us each week. If you have not left us that 5-star review, it is so important in helping us to grow. But we thank you for being here. Let's do this.